Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to My First Business, the podcast. I'm your host, Naeem Pervez, and I'm a relatively new and sometimes clueless business owner. And I wanted to talk to seasoned entrepreneurs to help guide me and inspire me and help me understand the best way to grow my own business. So, what mistakes to avoid, how to overcome common challenges, how to identify opportunities, and that's why I created the show for you, dear listener. So, if you're new to business or old, I don't care, I'm not an ageist. I bring on guests from all sorts of industries, and they are full of wisdom that you'll chew right up. And each episode is going to be like a conversation with a mentor that you never had. My guest today is Vuk Zlatarov. I'm never sure if I'm getting that right. But Vuk, at the age of 23, left Serbia to start a business in Dubai. He didn't have a clear plan. He simply wanted his life to be an adventure. And 10 years later, he's the owner of Creitive, a global digital product agency with offices in Dubai, Singapore, and Serbia. And he also owns a one-of-a-kind video podcast production company called Poddster. In this episode of My First Business, Vuk and I will be discussing how to know if you're an entrepreneur, the magic of thinking big and how to actualize your vision, huge bootstrapping mistakes to avoid, how to work alongside business partners, leveraging impatience, the power of quitting at the right time, his driving force and what pushes him forward, and what it's like to run a business in Dubai. I got to know Vuk because, well, he was my boss. In fact, he was the one that I submitted my resignation letter to start my very own business because, what can I say? He inspired me so much every day that I wanted to do what he was doing. So, without further ado, please enjoy my part therapy, part conversation with Vuk Zlatarov. My First Business. Vuk, welcome.
Thank you.
We're going to go a lot of different places, and I'm going to get some real good answers out of you. But I want to start with one question that you have to tell me if this is right or wrong. A little story. Is it true that you almost chose to live on a boat in your early years in Dubai?
This is good. Your first episode and you're prepared. It is actually true. And that was Veljko's idea. And Veljko is my business partner, as you know. But for the sake of the audience, it's the person that got me on board of my first business and that I moved to Dubai with to start Creitive. Yeah. So we were doing our math for the first year of how much the business is going to cost us. And we figured maybe it's going to be cheaper to live on a boat in Dubai Marina and pay for the berth and rent the boat, or actually buy the boat on loan.
Boat.
Yeah, on loan. Than to rent a one-bedroom apartment in Greens, because at the time it was around 90,000 dirhams for the small buildings. Yeah.
So it sounded like a good idea to do that.
Amazing idea. It's still a good idea.
It's still a good idea. Yeah, for those of you checking, you can contact Vuk after that. He has some good boat rates. But Vuk, let's, for the audience, tell them who you are today, where you are today professionally. When you meet someone at a party and they want to know who's Vuk, what does he do? What do you tell them? How do you introduce yourself?
I tell them that I'm going through identity crisis. There is a couple of things that I'm doing and then I'm never, too sure how to position myself in a conversation, but I guess that depends of who am I talking to. But in a nutshell, I'm a businessman or an entrepreneur, and I have a couple of different businesses. On the back of everything is Creitive, obviously, which is started off as a software development company, now turning into more of a venture building studio. And then from 2 years ago, I started my podcast, as you know, which led me to start another company, Poddster, which is a full-service podcast production studio. So I'm kind of in a couple of different areas, but I'm trying to make them all work together nicely.
How would you describe those businesses in numbers, like Creitive, number of people, how long you've been around?
So Creitive is the first business that I started, and it was in 2012. So it's been 9 years now. Creitive Venture Studio has been around now for a year, and Poddster for now around a year as well. And then there are several other startups that are under the umbrella, obviously, but that's considered still under the umbrella of venture building. But yeah, we've been around for some time now. When I say it, 10 years being in business, it sounds like a lot, and it feels like it was a snap of the finger. But yeah.
Speaking of snap of the finger, let's go really, really far back. Something that passes by really quickly is your early life, right? Like before you started a business, how was life for you? How was your childhood? Your parents? What city you grew up in? What you spent your free time doing? What was Vuk like back then?
Sure. So I was born and raised in Serbia, 1990. So I was lucky that I was very young and I didn't experience the bad times we've been through from 1990s to 1995, let's say. We've been through a lot of wars and stuff, bad stuff. So I was young. But then in 1999, I do remember a conflict that we had with a certain global power that was trying to teach us a lesson. So I do remember bombing and all of that stuff, running in the shelter and then out. But it's funny that not a lot of people who grew up during that period in Serbia remember that time as, bad time or traumas. We all remember it because it was really fun. There was sirens going, that there's going to be an airstrike.
How old were you when this was happening?
I was 9. Okay. So I was running down to a shelter, and then we were just jumping in one place, waiting for the air attack to stop, so we can go back on the field and play soccer. It's
like an ice cream truck. Like you run around and wait for an ice cream truck sound.
It's funny now when you think about it. It's really sad, but we do remember that as a lot of fun because we've spent a lot of time together, hanging out. There was no school, obviously. But then later on, things stabilized in the country. I went to most of my early life I've spent in school and rowing. That was my sport. So I was rowing for around 7-8 years. I was a member of a national team, traveling around the world, competing. So that was fun, and I have a lot of good memories from that period of my life. And I think that kind of taught me a lot of good lessons in life, because rowing is a very tough sport. So you need to practice your stubbornness. You need to push through a very difficult. So the race lasts for around 8 minutes, and 8 minutes are of absolute terror. So it's very, very difficult. And after the first minute, you feel like you're done, and you need to continue for another 7 minutes. And I think that kind of taught me a lesson that you can do a lot more than you think that you can do. So, the moment you start your business, after year 1, you think, I'm done with this.
Yeah.
But then you know that you can go for 9 more. And that's what I've been doing so far.
So you're trying to connect the dots from rowing to, and it was a team sport too, right?
It was a team sport, yeah. So, and then obviously I went to college. I had a bad accident on my bicycle, broke my back. So that kind of turned me in a completely different direction. Luckily, you never know what good can come out of a bad situation on a first kind of sight. So I enrolled to Faculty of Organizational Sciences in Serbia, Belgrade. I met the crew, Veljko, Dragan, Nemanja, and the rest. And after college, we started the company, and that's how it all started.
Let me talk. You're very good at my segues. Have you been reading my script? But I want to talk about that first business. You meet this crew. You guys get along. I guess you form friendships, and then who's the first person to recommend, like, hey guys, we should do something? And when that was happening, what was going through your mind initially? What were your considerations, doubts, fears, resistance? How were you looking at the opportunity of the whole thing?
Sure. So it all started after I graduated from my 4th year, so bachelor studies. We all spend a lot of time together on uni, doing all sorts of things together. Majority of them hustling, and trying to build a business even earlier.
Like what? What was your first few attempts?
We were doing a bunch of stuff when it comes to travel, parties, A lot of my friends were in partying at the time, clubs. So we were trying to make something out of it. But we all recognize each other as entrepreneurial spirit that we all have. So Veljko was the first one that really went for it, and he started a company with Nemanja back at the time. And then when I graduated, he invited me to join Dubai team because he was thinking about setting up the business in Dubai. And I was just like, why not? Whatever, let's go.
But it's got to be more than just why not. What were you really thinking? Like, how were you measuring the opportunity versus the risk?
Honestly, at the time, I was too young to measure it.
Okay.
I didn't have that rationale behind. I was just young. I was always adventurous. I always wanted to go for an adventure, and this sounded like a perfect, thing for me. It sounded cool as well. Like, I'm leaving my hometown, going to Dubai to start a company. Like, what's better than that when you're 20? What? I don't know how old I was at the time, 23. So I went for it, but it didn't work for me really to join the team. So I was more like, let's start the business together. So we made a deal to actually incorporate the company in Dubai as partners. And that's how the whole journey for me started. We came to Dubai, we set up the company, we got our first client, Zoltan. Maybe you had a chance to meet him before. I'm pretty sure you did. Yeah, we became great friends later on, and that's how it all started for us.
What was the people in your life outside of this main crew? How were their reactions to you jumping into the business life? Is the background that I come from, right? It's the last thing you're supposed to do. You're supposed to go to school, you get a degree, engineering, become a doctor, get some technical skill, work a job, work for a promotion, and then build a safe, secure lifestyle for yourself and your family. So there's a lot of resistance from our community at large. Is that the same thing for you, or how did it work out?
I guess it is. I can't recall exactly how did they react in the beginning, but I think I got them used to my silly things of what I've been doing until then, because most of my college I was pretty independent. So I was working on my own, making money on my own. So I was pretty independent. And then before graduating, I spent 6 months in US on a work and travel program. I was driving a taxi over there and making some money, and then traveled across the United States. So when Dubai popped up as an idea, I don't think anyone was super surprised, but they were like, oh, whatever, all right. Give him 6 months or a year, he'll be back. Maybe this is. I don't think anyone actually took me seriously that I'm moving there. I think they all thought I'm just going to Dubai to do something similar to US, maybe 6 months to a year, and I'm back like a project. But then the first year passed, second year passed, third year passed, and then they were like, "Are you coming back?" And from that point onwards, the only question that I'm still getting is, "When are you coming back?" And I think that nobody really still understands what this whole thing is about.
Yeah,
so
I can totally relate to that right now. Like, I started pretty late compared to you, and it's pretty new. I'm 35 now. And when I first told my family, it was shock, disbelief. And they were trying to ask me questions that were not questions, but suggestions. When people do that, are you sure you want to do this? And until today, in business and in your kind of business and my business too, we have ups and downs from month to month, right? Depending, there could be good months and a stretch of bad months and then 2 good months. And every time we get to this kind of struggle phase and my family sees the struggle, their first reaction is, hey, why don't you go back and start working again? And it's hard to keep fighting that, even though we have a similar kind of mentality. We're both pretty crazy in that sense. Like, we like adventure. We like doing things that are risky, may not pay off, but if you don't try, you'll never know. And I don't know how much of this plays in the back of your head. Like, how much of this are you doing for yourself? How much of this are you doing for money? How much what are you doing this for? Why are you choosing this kind of business life?
I'm not really sure.
Well, we'll discover now.
I'm not really sure, but I always explain entrepreneurship as I'm comparing it with the feeling that you get when you're gambling. I'm not a good gambler, but the feeling that you get when you're gambling is you put, $100 on red. That feeling of potential win is what drives you. The moment when you win it, okay, it's happy, you're excited, but second after that, you're done. But the moment that you're getting, the feeling that you're getting of a potential win, of what if this happens, it was what drives you. And there will always be more. You reach one stage, there is another stage. And I think I'm fueling my life and energy from that feeling. That's what I'm chasing. That's what I'm after. The building phase, not necessarily the end phase.
So results don't matter as much as the process?
I think they do matter because they kind of give you the validation of the things that you're doing, obviously. But the best feeling is actually while you're working on it. The moment things are, in all of these businesses, the moment things were in place, I stopped being excited about it. And I was looking for something new. And maybe that's a curse because we never settled. The moment we figured things out on one stage, we were looking for another thing. So we put ourselves out of this comfort zone and just work on something bigger. So, yeah.
Yeah, my wife and business partner knows this about me. Something very similar to what you said is that when I do accomplish my big goals, so if I write down a goal and it has a 2-year timeline to finish up, or 2 or 3, and it's really giant, as soon as I finish accomplishing that goal, I have a big giant ball of anxiety in my body. Because, I'm done. I did what what I said I was going to do. What I planned to do, it's done. Now what?
Yeah.
What's the next challenge I'm going to take on? And I don't know how much time you spend about thinking about the next challenge for it. For me, sometimes days, weeks, months of this just anxiously walking around looking for the next challenge. Is it the same for you?
I think it's more about minutes.
Uh-huh.
Okay, hours to be honest. The other day, I woke up. There wasn't that many things that I could really do. I mean, there's always things that you can do, but there was no anything burning that I have to do. So my morning was pretty slow, and somewhere around noon, I felt so anxious that I have to work on something, create something, that I took one of the ideas that we came up with a couple of weeks back and I started working on a business plan. And after I was done with 2 or 3 hours session, I felt so good. I felt, okay, this day can end.
Yeah.
So this is what I'm going through daily. And I'm pretty sure most of entrepreneurs or builders who are truly working or living that life feel the same. And the question now is, how do you make the best out of it? Because being anxious is not necessarily a good thing. There are times where you actually need to sit and relax, and I think that a lot of other aspects of your life suffer because of that feeling. So this is something that I'm looking the answer for. I don't have all of the answers.
Well, you'll figure it out tonight in your journal, won't you? I want to talk about something you mentioned right now, because it's one of the things I love about you. It's how, you're a big thinker, or at least I can say that. Maybe you won't say that by yourself, but I think you're a big thinker, and people who've been around you can say the same thing. And I think it's something that you've developed over time. But it's not just about thinking. I've seen your process of thinking. And just for the guests that are listening, Vuk is or you can correct me if I'm wrong, but a visual thinker. So he'll always be either working on a deck of some sort within Keynote to hash out his ideas, or it will be pieces of paper where he's drawing stuff, or it will be his wall where he's connecting Post-its with each other and moving things around. But he likes to think visually. Is that true?
Yeah, I think it's true. Yeah, I think it's true. It helps. It helps to put things on the paper, and see them actually.
So I want to talk about one thing that you mentioned right there about working on that business plan to solve that anxiety. I know you're not a typical business student. I know you didn't go to Harvard and anything. How do you think of business plans? When you say business plan, how are you trying to hash out that idea? How are you putting Are you putting numbers behind it? Are you putting your hypotheses? Are you putting a roadmap? What does your business plan look like?
That's true. I didn't go to business school. I did pick up a couple of things from my uni, but I regret that at the time I didn't pay attention more, because we did have some great classes that at the time didn't make sense at all, absolutely at all. But later on down the road, as the years were passing and we were building Creitive, we were kind of learning from others and learning on the mistakes that we were making. And I was doing a lot of reading and educating casually, all over the web. So I built kind of my way of working on a business plan, which is not great. But for me, I really try to simplify it and try to put together the major pillars or the blocks of the business, which are, what is the service that we want to offer, or the product? What is that service about and what the product is about? What is the USP, or why would that service or product be better than the others? And I like that part because during that phase you have time to an opportunity to play with it and build it, to kind of build it in a way to be sellable. And then important aspects of how are you going to market it. And there is, as you know, a lot of different ways to do it. How much you're going to price it. And one important thing is whether there is a market fit for something like that. I don't really have a template, but I just start from most simple building blocks and then develop them further.
Okay. And this is not set in stone. It's something that improves as you start the execution of the idea.
No, absolutely. This is something that evolves. I cannot say that I'm really great at keeping my business plan alive. You know what I say? You should start your business plan, and the business plan should follow your business, and you should always go back to the business plan and the PPT and improve it, etc. I'm not great at that. I like to build the basic, put it together, start the company or start the business, and then work on the actual business and try to. I'm a big believer in numbers, and numbers are something that I really try to pay attention a lot. So for anything that I do, I always have a P&L next to me that I'm trying to improve, and I'm always trying to predict, what can happen next year and how can we meet our targets next year. So after the business plan is done, which is this kind of a text format, just to clear things out for myself, I switch to numbers, and that's how I try to run any business that we have.
Right. So you just use it as a fire starter. You just use it as to get started, and once it's going, it's going.
Yeah, I think it's just of a very structured, drawing board.
Yeah. It's like some people use a napkin.
I do use a lot of napkins.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I love going to the coffee shop and taking the napkin. It's my fetish.
Okay, and you keep stacks of them at home?
I have some of them. Yeah, I have some of them. Yeah, I love signing contracts on napkins as well when with someone.
Tell me more about that.
Whether that's a business or just a social thing. When we're casually sitting, having our coffee, and we agree about something, and I want us to commit to it, so I just quickly, sketch it out, the contract on the napkin, put two lines for signature, we sign it, and I keep it.
Really?
So I can remind you one day.
Yeah. Okay. I'm lucky I don't have one of that with you. Yeah. Otherwise, you'll be holding it in my face. Very cool, man. I want to talk about when you're thinking of these business ideas. And how would you describe yourself? Would you describe yourself? Well, initially you did say that you're a businessman, right? Versus on the other side is someone technical with technical skills. And businesses are started by both kinds of people. Sometimes there's technical people who know a certain skill and they're working on that and they make a business out of it, versus the other side where a businessman is looking for opportunities and he knows who to engage, when to engage, and how much to engage to get the job done. You'd say you're more of the latter, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And how does that work for you in that sense? Like, is that where your partners come in handy when you're ideating? Because the world is your oyster at that point, right? You can think of anything because fulfillment can be done one way or the other by somebody else. Does that affect your thinking in some way?
Well, I think you're right. There are two types of entrepreneurs or people who end up being an entrepreneur. The ones who start from the very first day their own business and they start from the business angle, and then the others who are just working on their skills or a product on their own, and then at one point they just realize actually this can be a business, and they then turn it into an entrepreneurial journey. I'm not sure what is the better way. I don't think there is a better way. I was always wondering, what if back at that time, because when we started Creitive, there was 5 businessmen and 1 technical person. So we basically, at the very first day, with 1 technical person, we had to pay the salaries for the rest of 5 business people. I'm not sure that worked really well at the beginning because we were hungry all the time.
Eating cans of tuna.
Yeah. But I think that we were maybe just young at the time and inexperienced. So we were just getting into an unknown. Now, if you would to put 5 businessmen together, probably results would be coming a lot faster. But I see this as just 2 different ways to reach a certain goal. The downside of being a businessman and starting a business is that you actually need to hire people immediately. There isn't that many things that you can do on your own, unless your business is in some sort of a consultancy or something like that. But then the upside, obviously, is that you understand business and you have that kind of the edge comparing to the technical person. On the other side, the technical person, when they start working on a business, they're a one-man show who can deliver value on their own most of the time or work on a product on their own. We were always missing in Creitive, being a software development company. Sometimes I felt like I would love if I would be capable of building a product after hours. So I have an idea. So now today, if I come up with the idea, maybe if I had more technical skills, I would be able to put together a prototype really quickly on my own and just get some traction or some investment. Now I always need to engage someone else. Usually you figure things out how to do it, but you always need to spend some equity on it, or you need to pay something. So you are in a not that great of a spot.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't have an answer. What is a better, if that was even a question, but what is a better angle? And I think
Maybe
these are just 2 different angles.
It's one of those things that, it's always the overused word in business. It's a balance. It's like a mix. So from our perspective, our business, Digitalina, started as an accident. My wife, Alina, and my partner, she was running this as a freelancer, the technical person who knows how to run ads and do campaigns on social media for clients. And just a number of clients increased to a point where she realized she had to become a business person. And these journeys are equally hard, I think, for a purely technical person to become a business person hybrid and a purely business person to learn technical skills. They're very hard journeys. So being able to find, like you guys did, you had someone technical in one of the founders and you had the business mind, and the collaboration of that probably is the best. One or the other, a personal opinion right now, it might change in 10 years, might change in 5 years, is one or the other doesn't work. It needs to be a mix of both.
Absolutely. You cannot be, a jack of all trades. You shouldn't be, because that's most likely impossible. So, a lot more experienced people than us and smarter people than us said that already,
Yeah.
When you're starting a business, you need to and try to partner with people who are better than you in certain fields, financials, product, marketing, sales. These are all very specific fields. So ideally, you can put together a team where each individual is focused on a certain area and they're specializing in that area.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to build my technical skills, by the way. I don't see a value in it. It would be probably a waste of time.
You think it's too late, or you're just not inclined to it?
I think there's a lot of other things that I could do or work on than trying to become, a technical tech guy.
Yeah. No, I think I understand what you're saying. Maybe just expanding on it a bit. In our perspective, Alina is more of the technical person, and she's always training me on the technical stuff. And she's also a natural business person, but I have more time and resources and effort that I can put into the business side of things. And we always come at this journey every 3 or 6 months where we're thinking, okay, Naeem, should you learn more of the technical stuff? Or we're asking the question like, Alina, should you step away from the technical stuff and join more on the business side of things? But our natural inclinations come to play a lot. Like what you're naturally feeling inside you will be coming out regardless of what one person or the other person is saying or thinking or doing or planning.
Well, here's how I look at it. When you start a business, the most difficult part when you start a business, which means you start growing, you start hiring people, it's difficult to stay in a place where, okay, I have a couple of clients, I have a couple of people, I'm technical, you're a business, that's it. We're going to stay like this forever. It's good. We're making some money. We're stable. We're going to live happily ever after. You're either going to scale or you're going to die. I don't see how you can stay, in that middle place. All right. So probably you're looking to scale and you are going to grow. If you are going to grow, it's going to be more about hiring than specializing in your, set of skills. Knowing technical stuff can help you, and you should be aware of what's going on out there so that you can go and manage people. But most of the work will be about hiring the right talent, and that's it. And again, it's not me saying that; it's just the fact that everyone out there, is saying.
Yeah. The struggle that we have right now, and maybe you've had experience with this, when hiring, especially senior people, for example, technical senior people, you're always kind of doing the math and immediately doesn't make sense because your outflow is going to be more than your inflow because it's a chicken and the egg story, right? Do you get that big client and then you hire the senior person, or do you get the senior person first and then go after the client? And I think you had this chat with your technical co-founder Milos a lot, right? Like if you had a choice to hire a salesperson or a coder, what would you do?
Yeah, and he said coder, and I said that's a salesperson. And I still believe the salesperson is the first person to hire. The reason being is that unless you're in some industry that is very, very specialized or a very niche where there is just a few experts out there, there are people that you can hire. So, having that burden of a senior person on the team too early in order to get the client, I don't think that you're really getting a lot of the advantage or the edge to get a big client. Salesperson is going to sell, and then figure out how you're going to deliver. This is bootstrap. We're talking about very early stage of bootstrapping, right? And bootstrapping is not recognizing the hiring of 5 experts so that you can eventually find a big deal.
Yeah, someone needs to pay the bills.
Someone needs, unless these experts are paid out of the equity, their partners, they're working for free or whatever.
Yeah. So either you raise money or you get clients to pay you money, but either way, you need money to hire these experts and get them working on something.
Exactly. We bootstrapped all of our businesses.
Yeah.
We raised a couple of times. Recently, we raised for one of the startups a nice seed round. And this is when you actually start hiring experts.
Mm-hmm.
Before, if you are going down the route of bootstrapping or you don't have millions of your family loans, I don't see how else can you build a business from scratch.
Yeah, no, especially the part you talked about, like stagnation. Once you hit that point where you're not moving, you need some sort of an inflow in one shape or way or form, either the clients or equity or investors or whatever else, or you're going to be running the same machine round and round and round at the same speed. The car is going at the same speed. There's nothing exciting, nothing bad happening, nothing good happening. It's like a job at that point, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I want to switch gears for a little bit. I want to talk to you about mentors. I know you've had some throughout your journey. When did you first recognize the need to have one, or was it that someone just was in your life who was helping you understand bigger concepts, someone older, wiser, more experienced? And you can name them as well. And if you can tell me some stories about how they've shaped your thinking, helped you through some rough times and good times.
Sure. I'm still trying to find good mentors. And I'm asking the same question to a lot of my guests on the podcast. Who are your mentors and how are you finding your mentors? And I think probably it's going to sound like a cliche, but mentors find you at the same time. And I think a couple of mentors that I had, although they were not officially labeled as mentors throughout the time, but a couple of older people than me who've been through this before me that I had through life came and just appeared in our circle of connections by time. They were attracted by us and by me, and I was attracted by them because they had a knowledge in a certain field. There was a certain synergy, and we just started spending time together. And I think it is extremely important, and I'm still not happy that I'm not spending more time with my mentors, because the amount of knowledge and shortcuts that you can get from them is uncomparable to anything else. Absolutely uncomparable. So one of my goals for the future is to spend more time with them, because at the moment I don't think I'm just paying enough attention.
I totally agree that having older people around me it's been difficult for us in Dubai, just because we don't have a lot of family around here or people that we know, and we just came here 3 years ago, so we don't have those connections. And then it's about finding someone that you relate to. It's an informal relationship, so it's not something that you wrote a plan and you sent a 3-page business plan. Hey, mentor, this is what I expect from you. Here are the bullet points. I want X, Y, Z, and I want it by 2022, and I want it this much ROI on our relation. You don't do that, right? You just meet someone at a party, you meet someone for lunch, you meet someone for coffee. They say something smart, it resonates with you. A light glows around them while you're talking to them, and you're just like, whoa, I need to spend more time with you. Like, I had lunch with a business coach that I'm friends with now, that I signed up to his email list, and I really resonate with his emails. I just reached out to him, and I said, hey, really good email, I agree with your thoughts and stuff. And we started talking, and ending up in a lunch. And one of the things, the nuggets that he gave me in the lunch has really going to change my thinking for the next 6 months. And it's something that I've seen you do recently as well. we were discussing having multiple businesses. So having the Digitalina agency, we're doing the marketing services for the clients. We're having the Digitalina Academy that we're teaching people what we know how to do. And then we have a third part of it, which is Digitalina content, where we specifically produce advertising content at scale, not just for our academy, for our agency, but for our clients. So it becomes a supplier for ourselves. And he basically opened my mind to this idea. Is like, you want to make that a reality, make invoices to that company when they make stuff for you, even though it's your internal staff that is doing different work. And he said, give that part you're doing internally, give it a different P&L. And I saw you guys doing that right before I jumped ship as well, where the partners got together and kind of why did you do that? If you can explain to the guests that are listening, the separation of the businesses and accountability and goals, P&Ls, did it help changing that, or what was the thought process, or why did you do that?
All right, I think it requires a bit of introduction to the whole topic. And I'm going to try to summarize it and try to be as precise or direct as possible so they understand. But when we started our company, we started in Serbia. So there was a Serbian company incorporated. Then we established or set up a Dubai company, all right? And then 2 years after, we set up Singapore company. So we had these 3 companies working together in a group. But what we were doing at the time, although because we were offering the same service, Serbia at the time was having their own clients as well, and they were a development center. Dubai was a sales center with clients, project center, and then Singapore was also a project center without much of development force. So we were looking at all of 3 companies as one P&L, all right, which was working fine, at least we thought so at the time. But then as the time was passing, we were closing most of the Serbian clients, so we didn't do much work in Serbia. So at one point, Serbian company became just a development center, so just the expense center, and then Dubai and Singapore were sales centers. All right, and we hold them as one P&L. So the problem that we had at the time that we realized very, very, very late is that while you had on one side a development center where most of the expenses are appearing, all right, the team in Serbia didn't have any control over the sales side, all right, or the income side. While Dubai and Singapore, where most of the revenue was coming in, didn't have any control on the expense side. And the communication that was happening between Dubai and Singapore on the revenue side and Serbia on the expenses side was not great. All right. So we were ending in a situation where we didn't have any control. We were trying to sell, without really communicating well with the technical team. Technical team was building the team without communicating with the sales team, and we just have this disbalance big way. So what we did a couple of years later, we separated all three companies, three separate companies, three separate P&Ls, where basically we were leveraging all of the benefits of working as a group, all right, sharing experience, expertise, and clients. But we all ran our three companies separately, which meant that if I'm engaging Serbia office, although it's the same company, they're invoicing me for their work and they're taking care of their revenue and their expenses. And I was doing the same in Dubai and Velko in Singapore. And that helped tremendously in sorting out the dynamic between three companies and running healthy P&Ls on all three sides.
I can see why there was a disconnect there, right? Because every office has different KPIs, which are dependent on the other person, but
that you're not controlling.
But you can't force and you can't control either, right? And working with partners in general, this is a segue, another one of my segues. But working with partners, you have experience with that, and right now I'm with a partner as well. How do you bring up these kind of ideas? Let's say good business ideas, and you get them, you get the business plan ready. How much time do you spend in communicating the idea, getting the buy-in? Do you have, what have you learned? Like, what's easy for you to do with your group of partners for new ideas? And secondly, for challenges that you're facing, that your particular unit is facing, and you want help, advice, you're stuck. It's a very broad question, and I'm leaving it open just on purpose. How is it working with partners in all these different situations?
You're setting me up now.
Boom.
Difficult. It's really, look, they say if you want to go alone, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go in a team and all of that crap. First of all, there's no formula. Definitely working with partners is great. But you really need to work on some rules and set up the framework to get the most out of the partnership. We learned a lot of lessons over the years. So there was 6 of us at the beginning. Now there's 2 of us. All right. And only now we figured out how to actually run a successful partnership, because we introduced all sorts of different mechanisms. I think if you leave the conversation, so if there is no framework and there is 3 of us, all right, working for the company, and everyone is being asked for everything, and you are involved in every decision, it's not going to work. That's what we learned. Whether there is 2 partners or 6 partners. I'm now running a business, one of the businesses, and I have a partner, and we didn't establish the rules in the beginning, although I knew that we have to do it. We are still facing some, disconnections, and we're getting in certain arguments. I think it's important to split the ownership of different parts of the company, and lead the conversations and run the conversations only based on the numbers. All right. So just to put some context to it, if there is sales, there is a certain KPI. The KPI is the only thing that you should be measured against. If someone wants to challenge it, they can challenge it only to the numbers. If you introduce too much of a personal or subjective feeling or gut feeling, or oh wait, I think that we should do this, or I don't think that's a good idea, or I think it's a good idea, etc., I don't think it's going to work. So the more independence you have as a partner in the business, the better, and the more you can split your ownership and decision making between you, the better. Otherwise, I don't think it's really going to work. At least we learned that. So how we did it now? So Veljko, he is running Singapore operations. He is making all of the calls. So he is the CEO of Singapore region. I'm acting more as an advisor. So if he has a problem or he wants my consultations, he reaches out. All right. So we speak. I give him my opinion, but I don't influence his decisions. Neither I'm challenging them. So he is responsible just to meet certain KPIs. If he's not meeting KPIs, then we have a board discussion and we see whether something can be changed. And similar goes for me as well. If I have a project that I want to engage Singapore office in, obviously I reach out to them and I ask them for a proposal. They send me the proposal and then I evaluate whether I want to engage them or not. So I think that's the only way to run business. And probably when you're starting so early and when you're a self-taught entrepreneur, some of these obviously sound very obvious to many, and they're like, of course. But for a majority of business owners and entrepreneurs who are self-taught, this is an epiphany moment when you figure it out. You're like, it's so easy like this.
Yeah, my mind is being blown right now. Just the fact that you're talking about getting proposals from within the same company to support your project, and the fact that you take your accountability seriously. So you have to justify your idea by numbers. So if you want to start a new idea or a new venture, and if you're going to use company funds for it, you better have a good explanation of why you're using that and what return will be and what the backup is if you don't end up making it happen.
But here is where we ended up at one point. So because of the rules that we had established, I had to engage our Serbian team. No question asked. So there was no option for me. The rate that I'm getting, this is how much you have to pay. This is the only way how it is going to work. While there were other development companies in Serbia, office next door, that I could get a better quality for the better price. All right. So we were basically we were losing. So what happened later on, I would ask for a proposal from my own company and from the neighbor company. And if I get the better proposal from the neighbor company, I would argue, why is my own company charging me more than a neighbor company, right? So this created a healthy ecosystem where we were also questioning and challenging ourselves whether we are offering really the good service for the good rate, right?
That is blowing my mind. Just like thinking about that, and I know, like you said, it might sound obvious. It doesn't sound obvious to me at all.
Yeah.
Right? Like your own company, including your overheads and everything, should be cheaper to use for your own projects than the next guy.
Absolutely.
Or if it is more expensive, then the quality needs to be very superior versus just a little bit better or the same. That's crazy. What about one of the changing points for us as business partners, based on what you're talking about and just how the structure works for leadership and partners, we read the E-Myth Revisited. Have you read that?
No.
Michael Gerber. Really good book. I think you'd love it too. There's a lot of things I think you've taught yourself already from business by being in it, but for us, it's been great. One of the exercises in the book was draw up an organizational chart, even if it's just one person running the business. So luckily we were two, and we ended up drawing an organizational chart to start with. And we defined who the CFO is, who the client relationship officer is, who the operations person is, who the marketing officer is, and all the C-level positions.
How many people did you ended up being?
Around 9 each. I think so, because we under the chief marketing officer as well, we started building the whole organizational chart all the way down to the junior employees, because both of us were doing the bitch work too, right? We're doing the daily admin work too. So we did about 3 or 4 layers of management in between. So senior campaign manager, junior campaign manager, down one level is a creative maker, copywriter, all those kind of things. And we assigned these roles to each other. And the next thing we did, we wrote the job description for each role. But again, just like your business plan, we did this at the start. It's not like we look at it every month or every year and follow it to the T. In that exercise, you're also supposed to assign yourself KPIs. Every job title should have a performance metric or a performance indicator of why they're worth to the company. And that could be quality-based or quantity-based as well. So we did the starting piece, we set the architecture up, but it sounds very similar to what you guys are doing. Separate the responsibilities, write the contracts out, do something on a napkin, and at the end of the day, it's numbers. Like there's something quantitative that has to show that the role that you've been given, you're fulfilling that fully.
No, I agree. That's the only way to do it.
It's tough, man, though. It's tough following that.
Well, it's tough. The easy part is to put it together. You know, the 1 week you feel inspired, you put it together. The tough part is actually committing to it. Yeah, I agree.
Let me switch gears again. I want 2 stories from you if you can think of it. One is when you were at your absolute lowest point in business, to a point where you questioned everything. I know that happens almost every day for me, but was there a time where things went completely wrong? There was no end in sight to the mess that you were in. It doesn't have to be that dramatic, but you know. And what happened, if you can share the story of what happened and how you got out of it. And on the flip side, we'll talk about something really good that happened that changed the way you did everything from there on. But let's start with the bottom of the ocean.
Easier. There's so many.
Okay, let's do 4 of those.
It's funny. Here's the story. So we were in Lisbon a week ago on a web summit. Now this is disclosing the date when we recorded the podcast.
November 2021. Let's give it to them.
So we were in Lisbon. It's 2021, 4 years after we visited the Lisbon last time, and we were all over there. Dragan. We're not business partners anymore, but we are working very closely and we're great friends. Veljko, obviously, Zeka as well. So the whole crew. And it was funny because last time when we were in Lisbon, so we were running this operation across 3 countries. We had around 15 employees, a lot of salaries to pay out every month. We were still a project-based company, so, which is coming with ups and downs. We were in debt, so we already had a couple of loans going on, and we were reaching the point where we literally need to put the lock on the door or change something dramatically. So we went to Lisbon, not knowing that day will come, but the moment we landed, the team from Serbia called us for an urgent meeting. And they said, look, guys, it's a red zone. It's critical. So we need to figure things out. We have a day or 2. And the reason why we ended up there is because the way how the company was structured. We were not communicating between each other. We didn't have control of our expenses. We didn't have control of our sales. So instead of going to Web Summit every day and trying to get some new connections and meet people, we were in this 2x2 meters room on 2 crappy beds, Dragan and me on our board meeting, trying to make a call. What are we going to do with a company? We didn't put a lock on the door because we never did it before as well, and until this day, although we faced so many times this decision. I remember at the time, I think we got another small loan to just patch the hole, but that was a bad decision. Now, when I look back, maybe the right one would be actually to close the shop and start again from scratch, healthy. But we didn't. We took a loan. That loan covered only a month of expenses, which is the mistake. You never take a loan to cover your expenses. You take a loan to invest. If you're just covering your expenses, that's just a one-way street. You just burn through the money, but next month again you need it's not a solution. It's just a patch. But we, as always, we covered that month. We closed another project. One thing led to another, and we surfaced up again. We continue doing what we were doing, and then a couple of years later, a year later, we figured that we need a major change. Then we onboarded some investors, etc. We reworked on our structure. Then we were on a good way. But I remember, like it was yesterday, the feeling that we had, Dragan and me, in that room. We're just looking at each other and breathing heavily, and we were like, man, is this all worth it? Like, should we just drop it and start something else, or just go and find a job and, like, excuse my French, but fuck this shit?
And what pulled you out of it? Like, is there a theme? You said you got to this stage multiple times. Is there a theme of what got you out of that and continuing to chug on? Is it from your rowing days? You remember the first minute is hard, and if you get through the first minute, you can do the whole 8 minutes?
I don't know, honestly. Either we are all masochists and we like to suffer, and this is like our natural state of mind, and we are so used to it that it's like normal. And I remember the day when I joined Veljko, up until date, I remember that I always had to know at least 6 months to a year ahead that I'm okay, that I have some pocket money. That made me feel comfortable, because I'm coming from the country where you didn't know whether you're going to have for milk tomorrow. So having the feeling that you're good for the next 6 months to a year is good. So I joined Creitive, where the length of being safe was like a week or two. Okay, we have money for the next 2 weeks. That's cool. And I was so uncomfortable with that feeling. And I remember that I didn't like it at all. And I was talking to the guys and be like, guys, this cannot be normal. We need to figure things out differently. We didn't. And we got so used to that feeling that we learned how to live with it. And at the time, that happened. You figure things out that day, tomorrow, day after tomorrow, something else pops up. You get excited about the project. You get excited about the next deal. And you just forget about what happened, and you just keep pushing.
So eventually the clouds do pass and the sun does shine.
No, always. And I'm still confident. Still, like, there are days when there is a lot of, gray clouds above us. But I still think that we are at the beginning. There is still a lot of things to do. And all of these lessons are definitely an experience that taught us some great life and business lessons in life. I'm repeating myself, but it's all an experience. And I don't think really from where we started as completely inexperienced graduates from college started the business, I don't think there was any other way to learn these things.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the conversations Alina and I were having yesterday, if I can quote one of us, we wanted to burn this business down to the ground. You get to that point sometimes where you look at your business, you're like, I need to start from scratch. Like, let's get rid of the entire thing. Maybe we're doing the wrong thing, and we get these kind of sound bites in our mind where in culture in general, nobody likes a quitter, right? Especially someone who's just started a business. Why are you quitting already? What's wrong? So what helps us get through right now is, instead of trying to keep fixing something that's broken, is run the broken machine for a little bit while you're working on the exit strategy or the escape strategy, which is another venture of another sort. Is that similar for you as well?
Well, kind of. I'm not sure what is the right answer to that. I think my gut feeling is telling me that it would be way better for myself if I could have been able to quit more things, just shut them down and start something new more rapidly, had more courage to do it, than necessarily be stubborn and try to build something that is broken, that cannot be built. I'm not sure what is really the right answer. Probably I would say that gut feeling is saying that, but your heart is saying differently when you're in. And there's a lot of social pressure as well, that you just mentioned. A lot of people out there, including myself probably, you feel a social pressure, start a business, I need to tell everyone now that I quit and that I'm starting something new. I think that's just crap. You shouldn't pay attention to that. This is me talking to me.
No, that's good. It's a therapy session for Vuk right now.
But being able to do that, I think that's a big plus. That's a big plus. And the more founders of these big startups, scale-ups, and corporates I'm talking to, they are more and more after founders, all right, who failed. You would think that, they're after the founder who successfully built the business, has exited the business, so they want that person on board. They're specifically looking for founders that failed a couple of times because they're aware they learned a lot of lessons. They don't want to fail again.
Right. At least they took some action.
Yeah.
I had a mentor in my career days. And I used to, when I joined working with him, I used to do a lot of fuck ups, right? Like a lot of mistakes, a lot of things that I wasn't careful about. And I used to beat myself about it. Completely like my head down, get nervous, not speak up and stuff. And what he used to tell me is like, you know who are the guys who mess up? The ones who actually do the work. Like, you know who doesn't mess up? Is people who are avoiding doing the work. So that gives me a bit more confidence. Like even if you're failing, it's only because you tried something. And you probably tried something that was hard. You probably tried something that was more than you could chew. You're trying to bite something more than you can chew. Or, what's the opposite of failing? Not trying.
True.
Right? Throughout this conversation, I've been getting tons of advice from you. And there's things I thought I'd ask now and they're already answered. So I'm running out of things to ask you, but there's a few important things that I do want to get to. First thing is, we've touched on this, but patience. How do you develop the patience knowing that you've done this for a good decade now and I'm 2 years in? You know me, I'm impatient. I get frustrated really easily when things are not going the way that I want them to go. And I feel like that with the growth of my business and the results and, 20 ideas that I'm working on and things that are moving. But the most of the times when I tell people about this, they just say to me, have patience, relax, it will come. That helps me for 2 seconds, but I'm wondering if you have any strategies or tips for cultivating that or how, if you can explain that a bit longer. Usually I get 2 seconds. Hey, have patience. How would you describe your patience level, and do you work on it at all?
You're talking to the wrong guy.
Oh God. Okay, let's have a therapy session together.
My status on WhatsApp is patience. And there is this short, it's not a song really, from, what's his name, this rapper? Big Sean. Yeah, I think it's Big Sean, Patience.
Okay.
You should put the link into the podcast description.
Will do.
Show notes. So I'm not good with patience. I'm not patient at all. So I want everything and I want it now, literally. And I need to work that like a lot. What I'm good at is suffering and living like that and dealing with that. And I got so good at it that it's my second nature. And I think that probably a lot of people out there, if they could just be in my skin for a second, they would be, you're out of your absolute mind. Why are you doing that to yourself? But I guess that beneath of it all is just the big belief that one day things will, come to right place. There is Patrick Bet-David. Maybe you know about him as well.
Mm-hmm.
He's a
YouTube star.
Now a YouTube star, but a successful entrepreneur. And there is this one short clip that Zeka Ivan shared with me when we mentioned Ivan a couple of times. So far, great guy. I love him.
I love him too.
Kisses for Zeka now. But he sent me this clip, and Patrick Bet-David is sitting in his car alone, and he's recording the video and talking to all of the entrepreneurs out there and explaining that feeling when you're sitting on your own. Not only that you're sitting on your own, but you feel like you're on your own. There is nobody that understands what you're going through. Absolutely nobody. There is nobody supporting you. Everyone is questioning you. There is nobody who is giving you strength. Everyone is just, working against you by telling you, oh, why don't you just come back? Or why don't you drop it? Why don't you just find a job, including your family and friends? Luckily, I have only one person, Ljubica, my fiance. She is the only one that really understands me, and that she is telling me how much she believes in me, the only person. But other than that, you always feel alone. But then he says, but one day will come when all of those people would come to you and be like, wow, good job. Yeah, you're so great. You're so successful. How? The same people that didn't give you a gram of support throughout the way. Honestly, they tell you, great, yeah, you're doing a great job, entrepreneur, etc. But deep there, they're feeling like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that yourself? So I think it's just, you need to find a way to cope with that, and you become tougher. You just become tougher. Yeah. So there's I don't have patience. I'm not patient at all, but I believe I'm just psychologically tough.
Yeah. I think you don't think you have patience. I think you do. I think maybe you call it, like, if you're willing to struggle on a daily basis for a unseen, imaginable future, which you don't have any proof for, you don't know the probability of your success. And I don't know if you follow Stoic writing a lot or Stoicism a lot, but this is one of the main tenets of that philosophy. Stoics were famous around the Greek or the Roman Empire time. Mm-hmm. And one of the lessons they used to teach was, it's better to suffer every day for that big win than to have small wins every day and live that average kind of life. So you're contributing in a major way, but you're going to hate it while you're doing it. And it's also true in trading. So when people are trading equities or FX or something like that, there's a lot of positions that you take on, like you buy a certain thing or you sell a certain thing into the open market, that will be killing you in the short term. I don't know if you remember The Big Short. Have you seen The Big Short?
Absolutely, yeah.
So Christian Bale's character in that movie, he was losing money. His investors were calling him. He kept losing because he knew he was working for something big, the day where he can stick a big middle finger and tell people like, look, 200,000% return or something like that. But just going through that and pushing through that. So I'm going to have to develop the thick skin that you have and find that personal support that you have. Luckily, I have that as well in my partner. We're the only ones who think we're crazy. And we love that about each other. Like, we're probably very crazy. The other thing is, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is an accusation and also a question. But it's more personal for me. I have massive imposter syndrome, and that is evident when I compare myself to others. So I'll be comparing myself to people my age. I'll be comparing myself to people in my industry. I'll be comparing myself to XYZ. And I'd always, sometimes use it as fuel, but most time use it as nervousness. Am I made for this? Do I have the same characteristics they do? Did they have help growing up that I don't have? And what can I do? Do you have that? Or do you have a portion of that? Do you ever look at people and their, in quotes, successes?
No, I think the same level. And this is like just me, and this is just you. This is not like, there's nothing really to explain or to get a.
How are you dealing with it, or do you deal with it?
I'm not sure. I'm not dealing with it great. And probably the biggest downside of that is that you're not giving yourself any credit for the work that you do. You always think that you're not good enough, or what you did is not great, which is just destructive. And this is something that I'm trying to work on, because you can get a lot of good out of self-respect, and giving yourself for the work that you did. The same way other people around you are like, wow, you did this and you did that, etc. If you could do that to yourself, I think that can be really helpful, because there is not really good out of, feeling bad about, there will always be someone who did more, unless you are unless you're not nobody.
Well,
even Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, if you want to take entrepreneurs as an example,
yeah.
there is always something that they didn't achieve. They are not happy in life. They are not happy with their family, or they don't have friends, or there is always going to be something that is wrong.
No, absolutely. Sometimes it's a double-edged sword. Not double-edged sword, it's a wrong word for it, but sometimes it's a very mean thing to say, but I tell people sometimes the imposter syndrome is telling you that you're actually shit and you should stop doing what you're doing. It's not that you're feeling bad about, where you are compared to others. Maybe you are bad.
Yeah.
And that's not imposter syndrome. That's just being bad. But I was reading a newsletter email that I get from The Hustle. And one of the questions was about imposter syndrome, and the advice, it was like one of those ask the founder kind of advice columns. And the advice was open a Google Doc, write down everything good that somebody has said to you in the past, and write that in quotes, and keep a moving record of all the good things that people have said to you. And every time you're feeling down, imposter, just go and read that.
No, that's a good tip. Yeah.
So it goes to what you were saying, like self-respect and self-love, and like understand who you are instead of blaming yourself. Again, I think I might start doing that.
It's a good tip. Yeah. Maybe I'm going to give it a shot as well.
My last piece of advice I want to talk about before we talk about Vuk and where Vuk is going in the future. Because I know you can help me with this because you do it yourself. You're not just a big thinker. I earlier mentioned you're a big thinker, but you get things moving. You take the first step, you take action on most of the things you talk about. Not everyone, takes 100% shots on all of their ideas, but I've seen you always have an idea, hash it out, but then also plan like step 1, step 2, step 3. How did you develop that? Were you always like that as far as you've known, or is that a skill that you developed, like thinking big and acting immediately?
I think that is coming out of my, how would I describe that? And I know what you're talking about. I think it's just coming from what's the right term? Being afraid that maybe things will not go as well. First of all, I'm very self-critical, and I'm always looking for weak spots of an idea, which is sometimes good, sometimes not that great. Good from the angle that I filter out good and bad ideas, at least from my point of view. Bad is because sometimes I'm not just jumping into an opportunity with a bit more risk, so that and maybe it will hit and miss, but sometimes you just hit. But the ideas that I do lock down and I decide to go for, out of my because I'm possibly afraid that they're not going to work well, I like to unpack them in micro steps and have all of them. I'm kind of a control freak, probably that's the right word. So I like to be in control of what is going to happen, which is pushing me to unpack this in micro steps. And when you unpack something in micro steps and you have a clear process on how to do it, it's a lot easier to actually make it happen. When I started the podcast, you remember that I had to do for every guest, I had around 40 micro steps of what I have to do before and after they are on the show.
Yeah.
So I'm in control. Maybe I'm just worrying too much, but there is a good side of that.
Yeah, I saw you go from ideation of podcasts to doing your first interview. What was it, like a matter of weeks, I think?
Well, from the moment we said, let's go, yeah, it was a matter of weeks.
Yeah. And is that true for like a lot of the stuff that you basically want to fail fast? Like you want to like understand that things are going to work or not going to work, or if it's going to be hard or easy, like by running a sample test?
I don't know, maybe I'm just trying now too hard to explain it and I cannot really explain how that happens, but yes, I am kind of the one that goes for it. The moment we said, let's go, I really do go. And it takes me a couple of weeks from the idea to give it a shot, and then we'll see whether it's going to fly or not. But I guess when I come up with an idea, and because I'm kind of a builder and I like the building process, I get so excited that I want to act fast.
Yeah. Even though some of those micro steps involve other people doing stuff.
Well, that's usually a blocker. Whenever I had that part, that's usually a blocker. So I tend to do as many things as possible on my own without obviously spending crazy amount of time before the things are in place. I don't like to pull in people before the structure is in place, because that brings in a lot of unnecessary discussions about things that are figured out in my mind. I just need to kind of structure them and articulate them. And then once that is in place, I bring in people to fill in the gaps that I can do.
Do you give yourself a deadline for this kind of stuff, or like any kind of metric, like for this podcast? Did you set any kind of micro goals while you're doing these micro steps? Like, okay, I'm going to do this, but I want to see XYZ in return, and then I can move forward.
Well, I do try. I'm successful to a certain degree. So, for example, I said for the Change Officer podcast, I want to record 52 episodes, so 1 episode a week. And that was my North Star, and I landed very close to that. When it comes to the return, I like to also, most of the things that I'm doing for some sort of a business return later on. When it comes to tracking of that KPI, I also like to set some KPIs, because I do believe strongly in the law of attraction. So the moment you say and you articulate or you put on the paper a certain number, whether it's 100,000 or 1 million, you simply tune yourself towards that number, and nothing else is acceptable. So if you say 1 million and someone tells you 500, that's half of it, and you don't feel like, even if you're not looking at the number every day or like measuring every step of the way, in the back of your mind, 1 million is what is 100 for you, 100%. So that's what you're aiming for. And I think that's a key to achieving any kind of personal goal, is just to get comfortable with the goal that you set. If you want to sell your company, you want to sell it for $100 million. If you repeat that every day and you get comfortable, you're not going to blink when someone asks you, how much your company is worth. You're going to tell them 100 million. And if if your goal is 1 million and you tell them 100 million, you're probably going to, shake, or your voice is not going to be confident, and so on.
Yeah.
So I think it's getting comfortable with your goals that is helping you really progress.
We tried this thing when we were starting our academy. We set a goal for a number of sales, and we hit, 10% of our intended number. And I was asking somebody else from an online forum, an online friend of mine, and he said, you should have set your goal for 10 times more than you did. You always set your goals 10 times more, especially if it's a revenue number, and then act like it. He's like, when you do set those kind of numbers, you kind of behave in that certain way too. As you said, like when you put it to paper, your mind kind of tunes yourself to like thinking about $20,000. So you act, or you put the same amount of energy that you'd put for $20,000. But if you'd set the goal for $200,000 and you behaved like that and you acted like that, and your task list will be derived based on 200,000, and you still make 10%, you're fine.
Yeah. I'm not sure if I agree 100% with that. There is a good side of it, but there is also a downside. Downside being that you are extremely underachieving. So if you set a target on 1 million and you land on $100,000, you're not giving yourself any credit. You're like, I completely missed my target, or 90%. All right. So if you manage to set your target to 100, land at 10, and be happy about 10, then probably it works for you. But I don't think that can be really true.
Because you're lying to yourself.
You're lying to yourself. You cannot really believe in 100 if you're going to be happy with 10.
Yeah.
So I recently spoke to Ankit from Middle East Venture Partners, and I asked him about setting targets. And he said usually founders are coming in with this, big audacious goals, we are going to change the world. We are aiming for $10 billion in revenue, etc. And then you need to be realistic about it. So asking, where do you land? And then he explained me, like, from the maximum that can be like the most optimistic scenario to the founder scenario, you land somewhere in between. And as long as you don't completely under-deliver and you're okay, like 70-80%, that's healthy. All right. But if you set a target of $10 million and you deliver 5, like, something is wrong. it's either it's a product or a service or people, something is wrong.
Or your target was wrong.
Or the target was wrong, yeah. So target is not there to set you up for a moonshot. So like what they say, shoot for the stars, land on the moon.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not maybe. I don't think that I'm that type of person.
Yeah. Well, no, that's something to keep in mind.
But you need those kind of people, because those are the people that are truly changing.
They're trying to push the edge, and if they're thinking and believing the unbelievable, maybe 1 in like 100 actually does something, right?
For sure.
Let me ask you about Dubai before we start wrapping up. What do you think of Dubai for business, and what does it offer compared to other places? You have experience through your partners of Singapore and Serbia and probably other places in the world too. How do you feel about Dubai for yourself as a base for your business or businesses?
It's a good question. Like in a bigger scheme of things, it's great, you know, once you're established. But before you're established, it's not that great yet. Yes, they're putting a lot of investments towards startups, you know, making their life easier, etc. But there's still certain regulations that are preventing you to really quickly establish and start doing business here. Just like the other day, I've been 7 years in Dubai, running a couple of businesses here. Rock Bank closed my USD and Euro account without a notice. I just received a letter. I just received a letter saying your accounts have been closed starting now. And I had several invoices coming in, and I had several payments to make at that point. And I still didn't solve the problem. It's been 3 weeks, and I'm paying penalties for late payments. So there are things like this that can happen in Dubai that nobody is really responsible for or has anything to, you know, that's it. And I spoke to their relationship manager, who basically told me, I cannot give you the clarification why. It's just the bank's decision. That's it. When I asked him, who can I talk to? He said, nobody. You can talk only to me. That's it. And that's how it closed. Luckily, I found another person willing to help that we are now working with to solve the issue. But there is a lot of services in town, especially admin work. You very often you get stuck with people that are not willing to really help you. They are just playing their role and following the rules that are poorly established. And you, as a small business with a lack of space for any maneuverability, if I pronounce that well, it can be tough. So that part is not great. Other than that, there is a lot of opportunities, especially this being the hub for the region. I think they did an okay job during the pandemic as well. I'm not sure where this, how is this being fueled, but it's been okay. So I think overall Dubai is a great place to be for now. I don't have my opinion for the next 10 years. That's what I'm trying to answer in my podcast.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen in the next 10 years? Are we staying? Are we leaving? I can see that the government is working on that to make us all feel like at home and comfortable, give us kind of the way to stay here on a long term. But obviously, I've been in this town for 7 years now, so there is a reason why I'm staying. So I love it. But there is still a long way to go to sort out some of these small things.
Yeah, it's constantly evolving, right? Like I've seen this place as a kid, and back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, there was a big reliance on established businesses, as you were saying, like people who've already made it abroad, American companies, British companies, and they set up their regional offices and businesses, and all the way down to even restaurants. We had Pizza Hut from the start. We had KFC from the start, in lieu of organic local businesses. And that model used to work really well. It made a lot of people rich. It gave a lot of sustenance to a lot of people. Like my father, who started as a laborer, was able to work his way up to be able to give me the life that I'm living right now. But I think what they've realize and they're taking action on, and like it's not going to be perfect. Like there's the first time they're trying actually to spur organically the market, all the way from small to medium to large businesses, and they're trying to figure out a formula. I don't think any country would be perfect in that sense to do a business, even in the States, which is fully capitalistic and it's all about corporate success and setting up new businesses. They have their challenges too.
No, absolutely. And I always say, we should, what they did for the previous 30 years, it's really amazing. Hats off. There's nothing to complain. I mean, they're almost a brand new country built in the middle of the desert. And when we look around, it's just amazing what we see.
It's crazy.
So it's okay that things are not going as smooth because like you're growing rapidly. But then I think there is it's kind of natural to feel like that when you feel it on your own skin, because you're giving your life here. So that's like the cost of having 90% of expats in your town. Yeah,
absolutely. So where is Vuk going from here? What are your... Let me ask you a boring interview question, job interview question. Where does Vuk see himself 5 years from now? What are your goals that you're working towards?
Tough question. I'm always trying to answer that to myself as well. But I guess I'm just working towards, reaching the stage where I can do what I do on a larger scale and keep building different businesses, on a yearly basis. I'm definitely 0 to 1 guy. Not fair to say. I'm 0 to 1 and 1 to 10. That's me. 0 to 1, 1 to 10. Or maybe that's me only because I experienced that so far. I'm not sure if I'm 10 to 100. But I think given that I'm getting bored the moment and anxious the moment things are going well, and I'm always looking for that, out of comfort zone, probably what's going to happen that I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, which is, it sounds big now when you say it's not that big, but serial venture building on just a larger scale, and spend a lot more time with family and myself.
That's good. It
sounds okay.
Sounds like a plan.
Sounds like a plan.
So
don't ask me how.
I don't think you know how. I don't think any of us know how. Maybe I'll check your business plan for your life. Send me that PowerPoint when you're ready with it. But thanks so much for coming on, Vuk. This has been a great chat. I've definitely cleared up a lot of clouds in my mind after this conversation. I hope the people that are listening were able to get stuff out of it as well. Where can people find you if they want to follow you? Are you active on social media? Are you around?
I'm not active personally on majority of these social media. I'm on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
That's where I'm spending most of my social media time. And then they can all reach me at vuk.zlatarov@creitive.com.
We'll include that in the show notes. Again, thanks so much for coming on. Guest number 1.
Thank you. I wish you a good luck with your podcast.
Yeah.
Welcome to the club.
Yes.
You're a natural.
So, thank you.
So you're going to do well.
Amazing. I'm going to write that in my Google Doc when I have the Imposter Syndrome.
All right.
That Vuk said, I'm a natural. Write it in bold and like 40 size font.
That's it. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, man.
Thanks, buddy.
All right. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed that conversation. Please do share this episode with someone you think will enjoy it as much as you did. To find out who else will be coming on or to recommend someone I should talk to, please follow my Instagram. It's at myfirstbusinesspodcast, or go to the website myfirstbusinesspodcast.com. And that's all, folks.